Well, we don't have the normal Dwight Patel lead off. Very excited, very caffeinated. So I'll jump in, but I'm going to be a little bit more subdued, I guess, than Dwight is usually when he kicks off this show. But we have Don Irvine, Jeff Thornton, and our guest tonight for this show is Audrey Scott,
Hi,
uh,
guys.
Welcome.
former chairman of the well, we could probably go on for about 15 minutes with all the various formers. You have Mayor of Bowie, former Maryland Republican chairman. We could go on and on, but we're focused tonight about the convention coming up in Milwaukee, and we thought we'd have a nice preview as to sort of what the experience is like and what is it like to be on the floor and watching from in person. And we have with us the master of Muppets, Jeff Thornton, who is an alternate from was it Congressional District 3?
District 3.
And now Don and I were talking offline. The last convention you were at was in the 90s, so it's been a while since you went there. Audrey, what was the most recent convention you were at?
Actually, it was Tampa was the most recent one I was at. And I think I counted, I've been to 8 presidential conventions.
Wow.
I started in 80 with Detroit with Reagan Bush, and that was probably the most exciting. Mainly because when we went to the convention, the candidate really had not been selected. There were half the delegates were for Bush and half the delegates for Reagan. And there were several. I don't remember. I should have looked it up how many votes actually there were before Reagan was selected. And then the big mystery was who would he pick for VP? And we were all called into a hotel ballroom, all of the Bush delegates, and met with President Bush. And a lot of the people were, very upset that he hadn't won the nomination for president. And he told us all to be very, 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 very calm, not to be upset, that everything was going to be okay. And we went back out on the floor and he was announced as VP. It was a really exciting convention. And I don't think any of the others since then have been that contested and have been that exciting.
And that was, as I recall, there was some drama going into that convention about having, for a while, it was about a couple hours where they were speculating that Jerry Ford, former President Ford, would become the vice president.
Absolutely. And he had his contingent there too. Yes, absolutely. It was the most exciting convention that I have been to. And I'm sure there's others that are equally as exciting and dramatic, but that one was, for me, the most.
You're going to rub the salt in my wounds because I ran as a Bush delegate candidate in Brooklyn in 1980, and that was heartland within New York State for Reagan. He did well in New York, but that was a very strong county for him. So that was interesting. So now the next convention was that 84?
Yes, right. And of course, that was a Reagan one also. But then, and as I went down the list. I San Diego. I've been to New York, Philadelphia. I've been to Houston. I've been to New Orleans, and of course, the last one, as I said, was Tampa. So, and for people who have never been, if there's people listening who have just been, elected and are delegates for the first time. There's some really fascinating things that I didn't anticipate. My very first one in Detroit, of course, you go on your own dime, and it's fairly expensive. It adds up. You've got to pay. You've got to pay for the hotel room. You've got to pay for your flight. You've got to pay for all your meals, and of course, they have many special events. A lot of them for the delegation have been prearranged and are free, but there's lots of ones you're going to want to go to that there's a price tag. So it adds up. And my very, very first convention, that one in Detroit, I was a housewife. I don't believe at that time I was working. I was mayor at the time, but mayor, we got $5,000 a year honorarium. That was our salary and our pay. And I used that for make basically, tickets to go to events.
Right.
But I had a raffle. I sold raffle tickets. This is a riot when I think back on it. I sold raffle tickets to go to Atlantic City, and the raffle was for a hotel for one night and bus fare to Atlantic City. Uh, and I sold enough raffle to people took pity on me, I think. Anyway, I sold enough raffle tickets to pay for my expenses to go to the Republican convention in Detroit. Somehow that story got out. And when I arrived in Detroit, I was interviewed at least 100 times by reporters from all over the country about this poor housewife who had to have a raffle of 2 tickets to Atlantic City to raise enough money to go to the convention. And that was unique. That was just something totally unexpected, and it was a lot of fun.
Now that's a real spoiler alert, because was it the Trump Hotel in Atlantic City? No,
Oh,
no.
it may have been. I have another thing I just wanted to tell. The delegations are usually identifiable by some either article of clothing, but usually hats. Everyone wears hats. And I have a collection of hats from these different conventions. And what you do is you collect campaign buttons. The whole time you're there, you're collecting, and exchanging and swapping campaign buttons. And I was going to show you, this is one of the hats. It's a cowboy hat from one of the conventions. It's covered with campaign buttons. And this was a Bush Cheney one. So that was 2004. But this is one I just found today. I've got all these hats hanging up in my garage. And this one I hadn't looked at in years until I, was told I was going to be on this program and talk about convention. So I went out today and got down some of the hats. This is a hat from Reagan. This is from 1980. 1980, Reagan Bush. They already had the campaign buttons, they have them right there. And I want to read this if you can't see it. I'm trying to show it to you. It says, "Make America Great Again." Oh, is that wild? I saw that today and I went, oh my gosh. So it wasn't original with Trump. It's here. Reagan Bush in 80, "Make America Great Again." Big button, the biggest one on the hat. It's a great big one in the front. So I thought that was really kind of funny. Deja vu all over again.
Now, you mentioned the whole process. One of the things that's interesting, and you probably explain, is that each of the delegations are assigned hotel and go to a hotel that's for them, and they can have events at the hotel.
Yeah.
You and I, just a reminder, it's been over a decade, but we were both in Tampa together in 2012. But talk a little bit about because you went about the process of what you do during the day, because much of the convention, we should probably set this up a little better. Much of the convention is at night because that's when television is available. So delegates have time on their hands during the day when the convention is not going on.
Well, I wanted to mention too, many of the delegates from each state will be asked or appointed to committees. There's committee meetings during the day. There's the Rules Committee. There's Convention Planning Committee. There's all kinds of different committees. I looked up and I couldn't get an answer. I Googled it, exactly how many committees there are. I think some of them obviously are standard, and then they add some special ones too. I've been on a committee, I think, for every convention I went to. I've been on the Rules Committee, which is probably the one that's the most interesting. And those committees, they come up with their recommendations, and then they're actually voted on the convention floor, the recommendations that come from the committees. But you have to go, they all don't take place during the actual convention. You have to go a day or 2 days early to the convention if you're appointed and you're serving on a committee?
I was well, technically on the platform committee 4 years ago.
Oh, very good.
But
Well, then you know.
but the issue, of course, is that came during COVID, and so what the party
Oh,
did is they said, well, we take the 2016 platform and adopt it, because they really were not meeting in person in order to do that. But there, the requirement was that you would go to the convention. At that point, originally it was going to be Charlotte 4 years ago,
right.
and prepare a week in advance. I've seen news accounts that they're, I think, already meeting. So the process for some of those committees starts a little earlier and is very involved. And the way it works, you should explain, is that the members of the delegation elect people to be on these various committees, rules, credentials, platform, and I don't know, those are the three the most familiar with. And there's one man and one woman from each state or each jurisdiction that participates in that.
Right. And before they had Zoom, which was my generation and most of the conventions I've gone to, even Tampa didn't have Zoom. You had to meet in person. So you had to be there. And of course, then you had hotel costs for additional nights that you weren't really planning on. So, but anyway, it's interesting to be on a committee because it's where you deal with the nuts and the bolts and the real, nitty gritty of the policies and what's going on. The other thing I wanted to mention too is the seating on the floor of the convention. The delegations are seated according to their Republican turnout in the previous presidential election. So I just have to tell you, Maryland is usually at the back of the room, but you can wander around, and it's it's great just to be there. It doesn't matter if you're near the back or not. I think the only one that was further back than us was Guam when I was in Detroit. But it's just great to be there. The experience is just amazing, and I'm so glad you're going to get to go, and you're going to love every minute of it.
Now, one of the things that's useful to think about is there's delegates and there are alternates. So
Right.
the delegates vote, but the alternate is, the way the word implies, is can step in and vote. Now, while the delegates are on the floor, and there's only one of the things, it's like a lot of things in television. When you're actually there, you realize, gee, there's a lot going on in a very small space, and there's not a lot of room on that floor. What happens is the delegates will take a time out, and the alternates and the guests who are around the floor up in what would normally be in an auditorium, the stands, come down and just swap off credentials and then come down and spend some time on the floor. So
there's only one set of credentials, but you can swap them off, and people are expected, the delegates are expected to swap them off with the alternates. So the alternates get a chance to come down to the floor. Well, people are people, and human nature being what it is, not everyone is as generous with swapping off their credentials as they should be. But that's something that is stressed. And I was going to mention also, because Mark said during the day, you're pretty much free time. Early in the morning, and I'm telling you, it was like 7 a.m. or 8 a.m., every delegation has a meeting, and you're required to be there. Because they take attendance, and if you're not there, there's no penalty, but you're expected to be there. And every delegation meeting, they meet every morning of the convention, and probably for about an hour and a half, depending on the issues and what you're voting on. And at that meeting, they give you the daily agenda, and they also then you have issues that you'll be voting on as a delegation on how then you will vote on the floor. And so it's important that you go. The one thing that you won't do, you won't sleep, because after the convention's over and they adjourn probably like at 9 or 10 o'clock, then there's the parties. And so, you go right from the convention to the parties, and every delegation has transportation provided. So you're on a bus with everybody else in your delegation. So you usually do everything together. There's very little that you're going to be going off and doing, just with one pal or by yourself. You're usually with your delegation. And they almost always plan during each day one special event. I remember in San Diego, the delegation went to a winery. And I remember in Tampa, Mark, we went to an aquarium that was very famous because they had a special seal there or something. But anyway, there'll be special events that you'll do with your delegation that is has been planned during the year, and all those arrangements are you just go together and enjoy the experience.
Now, you mentioned a good point that's worth elaborating on is the sort of security cocoon that you in the delegation are part of. So you go from your hotel in a bus through security, and it can be a little difficult to go outside on your own, to go outside the security and then to come back in. It's much easier to do that through the bus. I must say, I tried that to my chagrin to go to an event, and it was about 50 feet away, but outside the security umbrella. And it, just going from doing the two steps in that process took a lot of time. But that is obviously an advantage of being part of the delegation, is that you can kind of go through that process without sort of the screening process and everything else that you might otherwise be part of.
Security is very, very high because obviously one of the other aspects of the convention is you're going to see the people that you always see on TV. Not only the talking heads, they'll be walking beside you, they'll be sticking microphones in your face, but also you'll see every, name, elected official, former, present, whatever. And it's just great to be amongst them, rubbing shoulders and, being with the group.
As I recall, in Tampa, we shared the hotel with a number of the people from CNN.
That's right. We absolutely did. And a lot of them would come to our delegation meetings just to get a hands-on, experience with what we were voting on, what we were saying, and interviewing us. The other thing I was going to mention is there's a lot of vendors. Brian Harlan almost always has a vendor's store there, but you swap things with the other delegations. And I was just going to show you this one. This is really from 1992 Texas delegation, and it's a glass paperweight. It's beautiful. Maryland, I think we gave crab pins, but whatever. But you'll be swapping, with the other states. And so Maryland usually provides their delegation members with something to hand out, something to swap with. And a lot of the swapping, hotkeys that you can stick to on your hat or what have you. And I don't know what Maryland will have, but almost invariably you'll have a hat, and then you'll have some kind of thing that you can share and give away and swap. It's all swapping.
We're not as well organized historically as Texas, because Texas has its entire delegation in each night a different uniform that they're all in, and usually it's kind of cowboy themed.
Cowboy
themed. And I can remember talking to somebody. I think we weren't as close to Texas in the turnout category as we should be. We were close enough to engage with them. But, talk to this guy who was dressed like a cowboy, looked like he walked off the range, and I talked to him, and his day job was an investment banker. But
right, exactly. They all wear cowboy shirts. The women wear cowgirl shirts. They all match, and Mark's right. They're very, very, what can I say? Eye-catching, and I don't think we even had T-shirts. I mean, I don't remember what Maryland. We had hats, and you will. I guarantee you'll have hats, or maybe a scarf to wear around your neck, a neckerchief or something to identify you, and so you'll all look the same. The other thing I was going to mention is now, of course, with the cell phones, we didn't have cell phones for those first several ones that I went to, and in each delegation, I had this job one one time, there's a telephone there that they can call you and give you directions of when you stand up, when, and also on your chair, there'll be a pile of political signs. And what they do is, at least the way that I was done, the first several ones I went to, they call you on the phone and they tell you which sign to hold up at which time. And so there's got to be someone assigned to the phone to get the instructions. And I was assigned to the phone one time, and that was kind of cool. But the reason I mentioned the phone cord had a Republican National Convention and the year printed on it over and over and over again. It was a coiled cord. And when you left, you could unhook it. And I brought it home and I hooked it on my phone at home. So, and that was so cool, because when the convention was over, people were running around to all the different delegations, unhooking the phone cords, because not everyone realized that you could take them with you. So, yeah, and I don't have that cord now because I don't have a landline, but somewhere I've got that telephone cord in one of the boxes,
So one of the other features I've mentioned, this is probably something you didn't do, Audrey, and I can't remember if it was in St. Paul in 2008 or in 12.
Right.
But I gave up my seat, depending which, because one year I was an alternate and the other year I was a delegate, but if it was the year I was a delegate, I gave up my seat on the floor and positioned myself so that I could watch the teleprompter from the various speakers. And so it was kind of a fascinating thing to kind of watch them. Of course, all of the speeches are prepared that way. But I do recall one. Well, it was Rudy Giuliani. It's probably appropriate to say this, riffing, completely going off the teleprompter. You could see what he was supposed to say, what they've carefully vetted. It was supposed to be his message, and you could see him just completely blow past it. And it was kind of an interesting thing to watch that going on.
He did his own thing.
Yeah, maybe that was provided a premonition to what would happen later on.
Maybe. But I remember in San Diego, they had special events because it was, beautiful, beautiful harbor there. And they had, some of the well-endowed people that came to the convention had these yachts that were, 85-foot yachts all tied up to the harbor. And we had one of our delegate parties was on one of those yachts. And I remember that as a highlight, and just walking on it, feeling so, so special. So anyway, I don't know what they'll be having in Milwaukee, but there'll be special events that just be, frosting on the cake and something that you'll remember forever.
Now, of course, the speeches are things that you can watch on television, but somehow they're much more memorable when they're in person. Mm-hmm. Which are the speeches that really stand out for you?
Oh, wow. What a question. Gee whiz. I'm just trying to think. I don't know. I remember Houston, and that was Bush. That was a great convention. And I was originally my very first convention, I went as a Bush delegate. And I was going to mention also, each state, when you get to be a delegate, you have to be elected. In addition, there are 10 delegates that are given to the state party to give out. And then there are, if you get another delegate if you have a Republican governor, you get another delegate if you have a Republican senator. So the numbers of delegates from each state vary slightly. There's a standard amount, and then there's additional ones. But I remember, which one? It might have been Tampa, or it might have been, I don't know, Philadelphia. What our state party did was those 10 delegates that they get, instead of giving them out to favored Republicans, like say the elected officials, minority leader in the House and things like that. They sold them as a fundraiser. And that's legit. They can do that. And they sold those 10 additional delegate seats to the highest bidder. Anyway, made some money for the party.
I hadn't heard that one.
Yeah.
So, going forward, how do you think conventions have changed? It used to be, of course, we'd have smoke-filled rooms, and that said, there usually is a fair amount of drama, perhaps not with a re-election, but there's usually a few kerfuffles that take place. Sometimes it's over rules, or sometimes it's over platform. But it's probably worth talking about the fact that all the business is not just nominating the president and vice president, but there are other sort of party business that become part of the drama that goes on.
The platform is the one that generates the most controversy. And there's always, the abortion one usually raises a lot of, discussion. Years past, the ERA was very, very dominant. That always created a lot of controversy. I don't think, right now, I'm not, I watch the news but I'm not, I'm not on the RNC. I'm not involved in the actual day-to-day. And I don't think you're going to see that. I don't hear it happening. I really don't think you've got the abortion issue is so, front and center like it used to be, especially not for the Republican Party. But I don't know. I am not on the platform committee, and I don't know who is, Mark. Do you?
I don't know.
No, I don't either.
Yeah. And so let me think. So we've talked about, obviously, this year. Have we made you want to go?
Well, I even though I'm on the political architect show and I'm a common guest and such, I've never espoused to be have much acumen in the political spectrum. I love the party. I believe what it stands for. I will help out the party in any way I can, but I'm not the kind of person. I'm very behind the scenes in nature. I don't like being in the forefront. I get anxiety when there's like a lot of people out and such. So I prefer to be like the one who's doing pictures or doing sound, AV. I'm part of the tech committee for the Maryland GOP because that's the stuff that I'm good at and I like helping out. You ask me to do something and I'll do it because I'm just that kind of person. But for me, it doesn't excite me to like meet someone in power. I mean, I was in I remember when Bush had his over the top convention for the 92 election. And I didn't meet him personally, but I saw him close by. And it was amazing just because he had such a personality. And yeah, I've not met Trump in person. I'm sure he's the same way. He's got a very, larger than life personality. So those people just, when they enter a room. But even for that, it's not the kind of thing that really drives me. I mean, I love what they do for the country. I respect them. But we've had speakers. I've been to a lot of like Maryland conventions, a lot of the Reagan dinners, Lincoln dinners, those kind of things. And, I've seen a lot of guest speakers that have been really outspoken advocates for the party. That have had security and everything. But for me, it's like, I'm thankful for what they do. I'm glad to meet them. But it's just like, for me, they're just like a person. It's like, I don't see them as like, anything more than just someone who's doing their job as a public servant. So for me, it's like, I don't know. It doesn't give me the same kind of thrill. But the same point is, I've said that I would do whatever I can for the party. So for me, my job is to cast the vote. I'm an alternate delegate, so I'm basically a backup in case a primary delegate is not able to be there. So,
listen, let me just tell you: you make sure you take advantage of this experience, and make sure that you get on the floor. It's fine to be sitting up in the bleachers, and watching things from afar, but the experience of just sitting on the floor, being part of the delegation, and I don't know who you're an alternate to, but I hope that they'll share their credentials with you and let you, experience that.
Yeah, and I've been a proxy vote for like some of the Maryland GOP stuff. I've been to, like, the Ocean City Convention and things, and been a
Right.
proxy. And so I've been like on the floor, and I've seen some of the drama even in the Maryland GOP stuff that I couldn't understand. Like, what is the big deal about this? But getting a full vote versus a partial vote for some things, and I'm like, I understand this is important to people, that they're represented properly, but it just seems like there are bigger issues to focus on. But it seems some people are just like. They're very much about the, making sure that every I is dotted, every T is crossed kind of thing.
Right,
So
right.
it's fine. We know all kinds.
Jeff, one of the things about it is you will meet a broad cross-section of people, many of the people who really are the heart and soul of the nuts and bolts of the party across the country. And that's kind of cool to meet the people from other states. Now, that said, that's not to say that there aren't a lot of elected officials and fairly well-known, famous people that are there too, but there are also really a lot of people who are the keys to the day-to-day operations of the party. Something you mentioned before, Audrey, I wanted to come back to. One of the things that's also fascinating is that the media from around the world is there,
Right.
and usually somewhere in the bowels of the convention there are these vast expanses of media tables that are where representatives of the press from around, probably not as many as there used to be, but that's a function of newspapers. But what's fascinating are some of the foreign reporters who are desperately trying to find a story and are, interviewing. So Audrey's story about the Atlantic City thing is just kind of perfect because they're really they're always looking for some little angle to be able to pick up. And you'd have to work to avoid talking to a reporter, which has its benefits and its deficits as well. But the media is all present there and is very much looking to figure out an angle to talk about the story. Well, I'm sure, Audrey, you've done scores of interviews over the years at the conventions.
Well, I have, but also I wasn't proud of the fact that I had a raffle to pay my way, but that story got out. And you're exactly right. I can't tell you how many interviews and how many reporters singled me out. They were all asking, where's the lady that had the raffle to Atlantic City to come to the convention? And I was green. It was my first convention. And, anyway, it was kind of a unique experience. But everyone saw me. I mean, my parents saw me, my siblings saw me. They all saw me being interviewed on TV. So anyway, but since then, you're absolutely right. The press, they're looking for stories. They're just, desperate to get any kind of human interest. They want the human interest story. And also when you're at home watching, those are the kind of things that appeal to the ordinary viewer too. So, and the other thing I was going to mention, Jeff, if you have friends from other states, when you're on the floor, it's not so much when you're an alternate and you're sitting up in the bleachers, you don't have the opportunity. But once you get onto the floor, all the states are well marked with their big, big signs. And I have friends all over the country because I've had an opportunity to be in an international kind of career when I was working. And I was able to go to other delegations, and find these people. Now you can do it on cell phone. Mark, you asked how the convention has changed. Well, one thing is the technology has changed dramatically, and the communication has changed, and so much easier and so much more efficient. So, but I would wander over to Oregon because when I worked at HUD, there were people there that were there working from all over the country, and all political appointees. And so, I made a lot of friends that went back to their home states when that administration was over. So that's kind of a fun thing to do, to go to the other states if you've got friends or family from other states that happen to be there.
And if you have time, you can get away in the evenings to some of the delegation parties for other states too, figuring out where they all are.
Sounds like Texas is a good place to visit.
Yeah, yeah.
They do things up right. I'll tell you, they do them up right.
They have quite the experience. But other jurisdictions do the same.
They all do. They all do.
You can see that we have a little Texas envy in Maryland, and I think that's a reason for having Dwight participate, because he really is the master of coming up with. I'm looking at some of the various things I've got over the years from him, but yeah, that's not a convention related.
Yeah, Dwight's kind of a swag master. He comes with like all kinds of pins and banners and everything. So he's like designing stuff like that. So I'm not surprised if Dwight would have like all kinds of fancy. Yes.
So let me just prepare this. If you do go, Jeff, and we encourage you to do it, we'll have to have a debrief at Masoni's restaurant up in Baltimore County.
Yeah,
that's a really great Italian place, and it's also a great place to do a post-mortem to the convention. So we'll look forward to doing that. Audrey, it's been really great. Are you envious? You wish you were there?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The thing is, I'm glad that other people are getting an opportunity. I did not run. I could have run, and I could maybe get one of the 10 from the state party too. But I want other people to have the opportunity, have the experience. I've been to like 10 of them. I've had my share, and I just really want other people to have that experience too. And the other thing I was going to mention, when you come back, at least for me, I've always had a follow-up opportunity for a local newspaper. They always want to talk to you and get a bird's eye view of what it was like and who did you see and what was the most important thing, and et cetera, et cetera. I always did a newspaper interview after the fact.
That's actually a great point, that local media does tend to reach out to you and try and catch up with you as well.
Well, I appreciate your perspective, Audrey, because I was going to say, I'm taking a lot of interest in this because I feel very green too. It's like you mentioned about like paying your own way. This was never explained to me either. So I'm like, this is very much like, I just thought I was going to be like, helping out the party and didn't realize all expenses. But that being said, it's like
GoFundMe for you tonight.
Yeah, I'm also explaining to other people. I'm like, I'm alternate delegate for the Republican Party. Like, what is that? I'm like, I had to research it myself because I didn't know what it was. I wasn't really sure what my goal was. So
let me just tell you, if you want to have a raffle, it was really very, very effective.
I was just going to say, you've been gotten some fundraising ideas from Audrey, and I'm sure nobody else is doing a trip to Atlantic City this year.
Right.
So you can. Give it a
I
shot.
forgot to tell you the nicest part of that: the person that won never claimed it.
Oh.
They said, no, just forget it. So I never really had to pay for the bus trip.
Well, thank you very much, Audrey. It's been great having you on. And Jeff and Don, thank you for both co-hosting and running the board. And Jeff, we're looking forward to having a show with you in August to do a deep dive on what it was all like.
We'd love to do that.
Okay.
Thanks all.
Great. Thanks so much. I enjoyed it. All right.
Happy 4th of July.
Happy 4th, everyone.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye now.